Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views on this beautiful, beautiful Jummah. And in a bit, we'll have our hearts and minds uplifted with our Jummah Inspiration segment. And today, we'll be joined by Moulana Moosa Akoodie, who will share with us words of wisdom and nasiyah that are sure to inspire and guide us on this sacred day. And he's joining us via telephone. Assalamu alaikum, Moulana. Jazakallah so much for joining us, and really, really looking forward to today's nasiha. Bismillah.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله أحسن الجزاء. الحمد لله الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. We praise and glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the innumerable blessings He has showered upon us, which we cherish and enjoy every moment of our lives. Today we're just going to be having a discussion on love. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the noble Quran, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. That those who bring Iman, they are intense in their love for Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the superlative word, ashaddu, intensity of love. And that is what our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must be, to aim for an intensity of love. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, in this universe, inclinations. Now, if these inclinations are towards inanimate objects, then it is referred to as basically an attraction. And also, there is an attraction amongst animate beings, human beings as well. Now, the example of inanimate objects, you'll find like the gravitational force. Anything that is thrown up into the air is attracted by the ground, by the gravitational force, and it comes back. In the very, very same way, you will find various planets. They stick to certain planets, as they are in orbit, in space, etc. You'll find that the sun and the earth, they have a certain relationship. And then you have the four seasons. You have revolution, as they call it, in terms of science. So they have an attraction towards one another. And even in human beings, you have the strong desire and inclinations. And if there wasn't this here, then there would have been no fun in life. Sitting for a bride together, for people we have an inclination with, we have an attraction to, and we love one another. So the important thing for us is to understand the direction of our love. What is a life without any social relationships? In order to spend a life, we have various loves that creep into our life. We have the love for our parents. The parents, they have love for the children, love your neighbors, love for your relatives, your ustads and your teachers. So you'll find that there's love that is spoken about in many, many situations. The husband and wife relationship is also based on love. But there is a very, very great difference, between love of the dunya, love of things in the dunya, and love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All those loves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained permissible and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has encouraged, that love is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other than that, if there's just nafsaniyat, where you please your carnal self in such a manner that you go against the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that sort of love is detrimental. And the Quran Majid also speaks about it. So, it is very, very clearly mentioned, it's not the distance which counts, it's the direction. So even if a person has the right direction and is treading on this path slowly, 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 eventually he will reach the desired destination. But if the destination, the area that he's looking for is the wrong direction, right? No matter how fast he goes, he can travel there within hours, then he will not reach his desired objective, his desired destination. So this is referred to as a scalar quantity and a vector quantity, right? So a person must not put his heart in any direction, because what is going to happen is he won't reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that direction is completely wrong. And we are guided by La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the central idea of this kalima is that we divorce ourselves from humanity, from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then with the relationship that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we connect with makhluk and the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your connection and your relationship with makhluk will be purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is mentioned that if two people have love for one another for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them shade under his throne the day when there is no shade at all. Humul mutahabbuna fillah. They are the ones who love one another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for the sake of this, in capital letters, with inverted commas, is something that we must comprehend in our lives. That whichever love falls under the ambit of the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then inshallah that is preferred. That is very, very good. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a very, very beautiful ayat in the Noble Quran. Allah hasn't prohibited us for the love of our parents or our brothers or our children, but look at this particular ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about ahabbiyat. In other words, giving excess love, in the wrong direction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجُكُمْ وَعَشِيرَتُكُمْ وَأَمْوَالٌ اقْتَرَفْتُمُوهَا وَتِجَارَةٌ تَخْشَوْنَ كَسَادَهَا وَمَسَاكِنُ تَرْضَوْنَهَا أَحَبَّ إِلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَجِهَادٍ فِي سَبِيلِهِ فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ. Say that if your parents, or your children, or your brothers, or your spouses, or your families, or the wealth that you have accumulated, or the businesses and you fear that you're going to lose them out, or your lofty mansions which please you, are more beloved to you than Allah and His Rasul, and jihad in the path of Allah. فَتَرَبَّصُوا, the warning is given, حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come down with His decree. You see? So the pharaohs of this world, they give preference to this worldly life, authority. They forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drowned them in the sea. So this is it. فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ. So when the call comes to the love of Allah, it must be above everything else. When the call comes for jihad fi sabilillah, then we have to leave everything aside and go out in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and strive in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a'la'i kalimatullah, that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must remain lofty and high. So it is as though that all the other loves fall under the umbrella of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the main aim and object in our lives. That is why the nucleus of love is a love for Allah. In the Hadith Sharif it is mentioned, Man ahabba lillah, wa abghada lillah, wa a'ta lillah, wa mana'a lillah, faqad istakmal al-iman. He who loves for the sake of Allah and loves anybody for the sake of Allah, or even enmity with anybody, it's for the sake of Allah. He gives anything, it's for the sake of Allah. And he doesn't give anything, also for the sake of Allah. فَقَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. His iman is complete. So remember, Allah must be kept in front of us. In everything that we do in this world, it must be for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will shower His choicest blessings on us and make us His beloved. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
I mean, Jazakallah so much, Malana, for your inspiring words. And I'm pretty sure our listeners also appreciate them. Have a wonderful Jummah also. And keep us in your thoughts and prayers. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair.
I mean, that was a powerful Jummah inspiration segment by Moulana Moosa Akoodie. I'm sure wherever you are, you're inspired, and you made this a beautiful, beautiful Jummah. Although a bit gloomy here in Johannesburg, but I'm sure you'll make it a beautiful one, and you're going to make Salah and keep all those that are in dire need all across the world in your hearts and in your prayers. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with news and views.